Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 80th part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 80, Super Moves. The next day was the first day back at school, and everyone was nervous. The week since the attack had been long and, for a few of them, stressful at times. But, thanks to the help from their teachers, Inko, and Eri being adorable, they were able to get through it. But it had been mostly quiet. Apart from Achiko, no one else had used the room Momo had set aside for them to use to speak about what the thing had said about them. Guess they still needed a bit more time before they started talking about them. Of course, some of them were more excited about classes starting up again than others. I am so pumped, Inesa said loudly as they headed to class. Of course you're hyped for classes starting up again, Hitoshi said. Of course I am, Inesa said. Yes, we've been through a lot, but with classes starting up again we can get back to our lessons, and better prepare ourselves for next time. Couldn't have said it better myself, Tenya said with a smile, chopping his arm. After everything we've been through, we're still quite inexperienced compared to most pros. We need to continue to learn to better prepare ourselves. We got lucky before. Next time our luck might just run out. The rest of the class nodded. They had been lucky to survive both the USJ and the attack on the camp. Next time something like that happened, because they just knew that something similar was going to happen again, they would be prepared for it. Especially Mei, whose combat plans had changed too. Can we win no nuke the fucker? She would like to see one of those heretics survive a nuke to the face. If she was allowed to make one, that is. People didn't seem to like her messing around with uranium. Which was a shame, as she could make some very special babies with the stuff. Ah well, she could always ask Momo to make some for her. Let's hope when next time comes around we're ready for it, Rikito remarked as they arrived at their classroom. They all quickly sat down and got ready for the day. When the bell rang, Kana walked into the room. Which was odd, as she was normally already in the room using a clocking field to make herself invisible. What had changed? Morning class, Kana said as she stood in front of the podium. Now then, I hope you all are well rested, because today is not going to be a slow day. Due to the training camp getting interrupted, you missed out on a lot of important training. Such as the development of special moves. Some of you already have the groundwork for them, such as Tenya and his Recipro Burst, and Izumi and her various smashes, but, in the next 2 weeks, you are all expected to have developed at least 2 special moves. This is to help prepare you for the provisional license exam. Now normally, first years don't take part in the provisional license exam, but, due to you being a lot stronger than your typical first years, you're being allowed this rare opportunity to try and get your license early, Kana continued. Since the camp was interrupted, you've missed out on more than a week's worth of training. So, for the next 2 weeks, you'll be playing catch up. There was some chatter amongst the class. A provisional hero license would put them one step closer to becoming a fully fledged hero. It wasn't a full license, as there were a lot of limitations. Like a maximum amount of time that can legally do hero work, and, barring special circumstances, they couldn't do hero work without a professional hero's oversight. But, the opportunity to get their provisional hero licenses a year early was big, as it means that they can properly help out the heroes they are interning with, not just stand back and support from the sidelines. Thus, getting more real-world experience. As a result of this, you will be having longer heroics classes to help make up for lost time, Kana continued. The next 2 weeks may seem tough, but in the end, they will pay off. Oh yes, Izumi. I just got told that your costume redesign has come through. Your new one is waiting for you in your costume case. I was told that it was made by David Shield himself. Izumi blinked several times before a large smile started to form on her face, excitement building up inside of her. She knew that her costume was going to be redesigned, but she didn't expect David Shield, the man who made All Might's costume, to make hers as well. This was the third best day ever. Izumi, Durandal said. Please stop vibrating. We don't want you vibrating through the floor again. Izumi nodded but was still vibrating slightly. She was just so excited to be getting her new costume. Indeed, for most of the rest of the day, Izumi was vibrating with excitement, struggling to hold it back. She was just so excited to be getting a new costume, one made by David Shield himself. When the time came for heroics lessons, Izumi was the first to take her case and zip off to the changing room the moment they were told where to go. The others just shrugged, took their cases, and headed off to Jim Gammer's changing room. They were surprised that both Mei and Shiharu were at the changing room as well. "Mei, Shiharu, what are you both doing here?" Toru asked, spying the two girls waiting outside the changing room. "Not sure," Shiharu replied. "Normally one of us is with you guys and the other is with 1B. But apparently we're with you for the next 2 weeks." "I think I know," Durandal said. "It's a precaution. To prevent anything accidentally slipping out when one of you is with them." "Makes sense," Denki said. 1B weren't present for what we went through. They don't know about that thing or what it said about us. Or the other stuff we learned. Keeping us all together prevents them from finding out what happened." "Wow, when did you get smart?" Kyoka asked. "I have my moments," Denki replied with a shrug. "But then, why are we allowed to stay with our own classes?" Mei asked. "I think that's because you can't really learn what you were already learning in our class," Denki replied. "You can't really learn how to make things or do business studies in the hero course." "Good point, I would go crazy if I was denied workshop access," Mei said. "I think she means more crazy," Hitoshi remarked quietly. Yui nodded before she entered the girls' changing room. The others quickly entered their respective changing rooms and started getting changed into their hero costumes. "Hey, Achiko," Mina said as they were partway through getting changed. "I'm just a bit curious, but have you ever looked into the principal's mind?" "I have," Achiko replied with a shiver. "All I heard was Rat God Wednesday." I dared not look deeper. The other girls all shivered. Yeah, that kind of made sense. The rat mouse bear thing that was their principal was an enigma. It was probably expected that he had some means to protect himself from telepathic intrusions. There was a sudden squeal from Izumi. "Ah, this is perfect. I never thought I would ever wear a costume like this." She beamed as she examined herself in her new costume. "Well, what do you think?" she asked as she stood in front of the others with a large smile on her face. The others all looked at her and blinked, not really sure what to say. "You are, Izumi," Achiko finally spoke up. "It's the same as your previous costume." Indeed, Izumi's new costume looked exactly the same as her old one, with the only difference being the addition of some fishnets on her legs. "No, it isn't," Izumi beamed. "You want to know why?" "Because it was made by David Shield using the same material All Might's costume is made from," she squealed. The other girls all sweat dropped. She really was a massive All Might fan. "All you've done is add fishnets to your costume," Kyoka remarked. "Literally, just fishnets. That's the only noticeable difference I see." Mei suddenly shot over. "Ooh, those aren't normal fishnets. They are made from the same material as the rest of your costume, so will be quite strong. Villains are going to struggle to cut your legs off with these on." Izumi nodded. "Yep. I realized that in my old design, my upper legs were exposed, so I added something to help protect them." "You are, Izumi," Achiko said as she walked over. "Didn't you say that you wanted to change the design to something less sexy?" Izumi blinked before she placed a finger against Achiko's lips. Shish, let me enjoy this." Before Achiko could respond, Izumi added, "I still have the old version that can be used for snuggles." Achiko shut her mouth. "Don't let Nijire hear that," Momo recommended. "Otherwise she may drag both of us off for snuggles." Izumi blinked. "But, you're not wearing a bunny suit-like costume," Momo retorted by creating a pair of red bunny ears and putting them on her head, finishing it off with a smirk. "I'm wearing a leotard already. I can easily turn this into a bunny suit if I wanted to." Oh god, it's spreading, Toro remarked, feigning fake horror like this was some sort of vile virus that was spreading throughout the class.
Izumi, Sue said. If everyone ends up converting their costumes into bunny suits, I'm blaming you, Ribbit. Izumi nodded.
Fair. Once they were all changed, they headed off to Jim Gammer. When they arrived, they were met by Kana, Snipe, and Ragdoll, although the latter looked like she had seen better days. Ragdoll's face, specifically around the eyes, was covered in burn marks, and her eyes had lost some of their color.
Cementos was there as well.
Howdy y'all, Snipe said, my wife brought me in to help out with your training.
Ragdoll's here as well to help keep an eye on y'all.
And Cementos is here to help make targets for you to try out your super moves on. Don't be afraid to ask us for any help if you need assistance developing your super moves, Kana added.
Or just ask Izumi, Durandal added. Izumi beamed.
She had so many ideas that could help her classmates develop their quirks and make super moves. Something that her classmates also knew, and was afraid of.
One question.
That's all it will take before a monster is unleashed.
A monster that won't be stopped until everyone's quirks were analyzed.
Thankfully no one asked for help from the get-go, so they were able to get to work on developing their super moves without having an existential crisis.
About half an hour into the training session, Toshinori in his weaker form walked into the gym.
Kana, he said as he walked over to his homeroom teacher.
Toshinori, hey, Kana said. Come to check on my class progress?
Yes, Toshinori said. I need to make up for the summer camp after all.
Indeed you do, Kana said.
You need to make up for that training plan of yours.
Toshinori frowned. Yeah, I know. That plan wasn't my best idea. I thought they needed a bit more pushing. But we can't break them.
There is a thing as too much training, Kana said. Look, I know Grand trained you hard, but the same training method won't work on these kids.
Not everyone can withstand that kind of training.
Especially when a member of the top 10 is expected to help train them.
What were you even thinking, having her fight Izumi? Daidoji isn't someone I would call a good teacher.
To be fair, I was supposed to be there, but I was busy with something on Island, Toshinori replied.
Don't worry, I will make it up to them. Especially Izumi.
You better, Kana said. You have a mixed track record with her and I want to see it improved.
For God's sake, Toshinori, you're a hero. You shouldn't be telling anyone that they can't become a hero. Especially someone like you, who once said in an interview that anyone can become a hero. Toshinori frowned. I know. I messed up that day.
Not a day goes by that I don't wish that I could go back to that day and change things.
I'm just glad things played out the way they did. Things could have ended up a lot worse. What do you mean, it could have been worse? Kana asked, sounding confused.
She could have gone on to become a villain, Toshinori replied.
Kana looked shocked by Toshinori's response.
Izumi could never become a villain, she was just too nice and kind.
Her becoming a villain was almost unthinkable. But, as much as she hated it, Toshinori had a point. Getting told by the number one hero and your personal idol that you couldn't be a hero would have been a big blow.
It would have been far too easy for someone in that situation to go villain.
And dear Lord Izumi would have been a terrifying villain.
She had seen the young girl's notebooks, and how detailed the information in them was. If a villain got their hands on those things, then they would have an advantage on every hero who was recorded in them.
And if she was to use them for evil, then she would be unstoppable.
It's a good thing that she wants to become a hero because she would be very dangerous as a villain. It was always the masterminds who worked behind the scenes who were the most dangerous villains.
Just like All for One.
She had the stamp down on the idea of those two working together.
A combination like that would probably result in the end of all of them. What were you doing on Island, by the way? Kana asked after a bit.
Helping David develop something that could end All for One once and for all, Toshinori replied.
Kana nodded and left it at that. Will they be ready for the license exam? Toshinori asked after a bit. Don't worry, Kana said. They'll be ready for it. I'm sure. California smash.
Izumi shouted as she smashed through a concrete wall, by jumping backwards at it and using her arse to break it. Kana, Toshinori, and several of her classmates just stood there and stared at Izumi's rather questionable smash.
Okay, that was a bad idea, Izumi remarked, rubbing her rear. Maybe using my rear to smash someone is not a good idea. Better focus on kicks and punches. Minoru gulped. I am not going to survive till the end of the year at this rate. I want her to California smash my face, Himiko blurted. Same, Itsuo Nachiko added.
Correction, I am not going to survive till the end of the month, Minoru said.
Toshinori meanwhile just facepalmed.
This was his successor, Izumi Midoriya, the ninth wielder of One for All. Smashing through a wall with her backside.
This can never get out. Ever. For good reason.
He couldn't bear to tell her that he too had tried a California smash.
He was so glad that there was no one around to witness it.
He'd never hear the end of it if the world found out that he beat a villain by smashing his arse into the guy's face. And yes, whilst there was the villain he faced back then, he knew for a fact that he would never tell anyone of how All Might had defeated him. Like, who the fuck would admit to having the symbol of peace smash your face in with his arse? Chitose Kazuki, aka Curious, was, by nature, a curious woman. Whenever an interesting story took her interest, she just had to know more about it. And sadly, there was one thing that took her interest that she had to look into. Her husband Akito, and the possibility that he may have been cheating on her. Now a normal person might have been mad about this and confronted both their partner and the person they were cheating with, but Chitose was not your average person. She was a journalist. And for a journalist, accurate and reliable sources were key. Her daughter wasn't exactly what you would call a reliable source. She was young at the time and she didn't really see anything that could prove anything. But her husband's activities were no doubt suspicious. She needed to get some answers on what was going on between her husband and the babysitter. Lucky for her, she knew how to look into something. And can easily call for help. As one of the MLA's leaders, she commanded her own battalion of soldiers. Trumpet and Skeptic had their own battalions as well, whilst their leader, Redestro, only had a few squads under his command, a handful compared to the others. But they were his elite guard, the best the MLA had to offer. Each one of them could mop the floor of any of their battalions. And just like him, she had a few elite members of her battalion to converse with when needed. She was currently sitting at the head of a table in her personal meeting room at Shueisha Publishing's main office, with two of her closest advisors with her. The first was Shikun Riho, aka Shitpost, a teenager whose quirk was called Skunk. Pretty self-explanatory really, she had the black and white fur, head, and tail of a skunk. And yes, Shitpost came up with her own codename. Now, Skunk doesn't seem like a very strong quirk. Until you realize, she's a skunk and has all the abilities the smelly mammals have. Including their ability to spray a liquid that has a strong, unpleasant scent from her arse. Needless to say, there have been days when everyone save for Shitpost had to enter Shueisha Publishing's main office wearing gas masks. Shitpost normally spent her days looking through Twitter, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Discord, Reddit and other social media platforms. It was her job to scour the internet and find anything that could be of interest to them, raising stories that could help further the MLA's cause or threaten them. There was a lot happening in the world after all, and most of the juicy stories were reported on social media first before the big media companies got their hands on them. Getting there first was imperative, as it made spinning the narrative in their favor so much easier. The other was a round ball of a man with thin blonde hair and brown eyes, wearing a blue business suit and trousers. This was Danji Maruyama, aka Gumball. Shueisha Publishing's best reporter, besides Curious herself. He was an investigative journalist who looked deeply into quirk-related stories. Since the MLA wanted quirk liberation, having him on their side helped massively with finding out quirk-related stories that could help push their agenda. Now on paper, his quirk wasn't all that fancy, it just turned him into a bouncy ball. And whilst he was bouncing, it was difficult to stop or control his direction.
Unless he's covered in mines, that is. You see, underneath his suit is an explosive-resistant jumpsuit, one that can easily tank Chitos's mines.
This, coupled with the increased momentum from the explosion, can turn him into a fucking wrecking ball. It was a similar story with the rest of her battalion. A lot of them had weak, mutant or villainous quirks, and with a little help from her, she managed to turn them all into the most dangerous battalion in the MLA.
1,000 soldiers ready to give their lives for the MLA's cause.
But, after her daughter told her that her husband may have cheated on her, she wasn't sure that she could order those people to their deaths.
Alright, before we get to why I called you two here, Chitos said as she started the meeting. Media reports. What's been going on out there that may be of interest to us?
Nothing new to report on the social media side of things, Shitpost reported. There are a few theories on what may have happened during the attack on the UACI joint training camp, but nothing concrete. So we only have the teacher's words on what happened there. There's nothing important in the news side of things, Gumball reported. Apart from a few CRC members trying to burn down a residential district full of mutants.
There are still survivors of that racist organization?
Chitos asked. She really didn't like the CRC, as a mutant herself, since blue skin wasn't normal, she really didn't like them. So hearing that a lot of them got massacred by an unknown villain was just music to her ears.
Different group apparently, Gumball replied.
The group who was massacred was the largest group in the country, but there were small groups who followed the same beliefs. This was one of those smaller groups.
I see, Chitos said. Were they stopped?
Yes, Gumball replied. The heroes stopped them before they could properly carry their plan out. Turns out posting your intent to burn an entire residential district on social media gets the heroes' attention, Shitpost added.
Chitos smiled. Idiots.
Just what quirkist and racist bigots like them deserve, heroes showing up and kicking their arse. The MLA was nothing like the CRC. All quirks were seen as special to them.
Each one was just as unique as the individual who owned it. Redestro made sure that there was no quirkism within the MLA.
Well, that's good to hear, Chitos said with a smile. Now then, on to the main reason why I called you here. I need you two to look into the pre-Avalon War movements of the Interrogation Department, specifically, my old unit.
The Cross unit? Gumball asked. Why would you want to know about your Akito's whereabouts?
No, not Akito, Chitos said.
Lynx.
I want to know her whereabouts in the 12 months leading up to Avalon's invasion of Japan. Lynx, the third member of the Cross unit, the unit she and Akito were a part of. They were the best when it came to extracting information from people. Akito burned people's eyes out, Chitos broke them by just talking to and Lynx, she just stared at them, no talking, no using her quirk. She just sat there, staring at them. She had no idea how Lynx was able to get someone to talk by just staring at them, but she did. Even if it took hours or days to do it. Lynx was also the woman they trusted to babysit Chiharu whilst they were at work. And a woman who may have been sneaking visits with Akito without her knowing. But she needed proof. She can't act against her without proper evidence.
Well, I'll see what I can do, Gumball said. But it won't be easy.
Tracking someone's movements from 11 years ago won't be easy, but I'm sure we have a few people whose quirks can help.
Yeah, sure, I'll see what I can dig up, Shitpost said nonchalantly, barely looking up from her phone. May I ask why you want us to look into one of your old comrades? Gumball asked.
You could just ask her yourself, you know.
Can't, Chitos replied, shaking her head.
What with her currently in a deep cover operation on the moon, I can't send her a message without compromising her position. Plus, this is a trivial matter. No point in putting her at risk for something small, now is there?
Why was the MLA interested in the moon colony anyway? It wasn't Japanese soil.
Ah, right. Forgot about our little infiltration mission to the moon colony, Gumball said.
I'll keep this on the low end then. Can't risk compromising our comrade's position. Especially after we've already lost 2 operatives up there. Chitos blinked. We've lost people on the moon?
Shipper and Cleaner, both were compromised a week ago, Shitpost said.
Their last report said that everything was fine. 2 days later, they were dead, cyanide poisoning.
We believe their positions must have been compromised, but we're not sure how. Those 2 had been up there the longest and had deeply embedded themselves in the government up there.
The fact that they were compromised is shocking.
They were 2 of our best.
What's more is that all our operatives up there said that nothing had gone wrong. One of them even said that they had talked to them only an hour before they died. So whatever happened, it happened quickly. Chitos frowned. Now that was worrying.
She didn't know much about their moon colony plans. That was Skeptic's department. Most of his battalion consisted of operatives the MLA had implanted into various organizations across Japan, and on the moon apparently. It probably had something to do with Yayorozu Incorporated having operations going on up there.
That's troubling, Chitos remarked. But not my problem.
Skeptic's the one in charge of that, he can deal with this. She had the news to influence after all.
And a potential cheating bitch to deal with.
But first, she had to prove that she was a cheating bitch before she acted.
It wouldn't do well to accuse someone of something without a reliable source to back you up.
She was a reporter after all, and reliable sources were an important part of the job.
Well then, I hope you 2 are prepared for your assigned tasks? Chitos asked. The other 2 nodded. Good.
Well, with that all sorted out, this meeting is adjourned.
We'll reconvene next week for the monthly progress reports with the rest of the dash, she sighed. Curious 7. Why did I name us that? She groaned.
You were drunk at the time, Shitpost said as she stood up and walked towards the door.
I'll talk to you later, boss, she said before leaving the room.
I see what I can do about your request, Gumball said before he stood up and rolled out of the room.
Chitos breathed a sigh of relief.
It wasn't much, but she now had help in her search.
Even if they didn't know the reason why. She needed to get to the bottom of this.
Whilst what Chiharu saw may have been nefarious or just a childish mind making things up.
But she needed to know. She couldn't ask Lynx, she'd just deny everything and might catch on to things.
So, she had to make sure that she didn't find out about this. It was a good thing that Lynx was currently on the moon, well away from Earth.
She didn't need a potential bitch messing up her investigation. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 81. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.